How would you say that churches could create a culture of openness and accountability that, just what we're saying, that encourages individuals to seek help without compromising the safety of the wider congregation?
I think honest conversations. And if you look, what I do is I compare it to suicide. So the biggest prevention of suicide is not public health campaigns, it's not adverts and commercials on TV, it's actually open conversations that break down the stigma and allow people who are maybe thinking about suicide or having suicidal ideations, or have even got to the point where they have made a plan to end their own life. And the one thing that can really help prevent that happening is to be able to have honest conversations with somebody that isn't dramatic, who isn't going to get emotional. And it's very, very hard because this is such a difficult subject to talk about. It is very hard, but I think that the biggest key is honest conversations, and that's where the role of small groups, things like that, accountability partners, and all of those things can be really, really helpful. And I found from my own experience that there is something, well, it's called the snowball effect. If one person puts their hand up and says, this is a real struggle for me, other people will come forward.
Yeah, turning our head isn't helping. So, being honest, even in the QPR, which is question, persuade, and refer, in the suicide prevention, hey, are
Yeah,
you thinking suicidal thoughts? Do you have a plan? That's actually very helpful. And so,
yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you so much because I affirm that when you bring the conversation forward, is this an issue? There's help out there, and pointing people toward resources in this way, I think is very, very helpful.
A lot of it is down to the fear, isn't it? If you don't know what's going to happen, you're less likely to actually divulge that this is a problem for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and at the same time, escalation is a very real thing that very few. I've never met someone that set out to do something illegal or abuse another person. But if you hear their whole story, you find out there was a long journey of escalation, that one thing led to another, and it got deeper and further than they ever meant to go. And as churches, I think if we see that if we could help someone who is, maybe they're saying, well, I only view pornography once in a while, is it that big of a deal? Well, we recognize it's what it could grow to, and we want to help you long before it becomes something dangerous or illegal. And for some, it has gone to that place, and we can still help them. We can have resources. But again, as I said earlier, for the vast majority, they're somewhere earlier on in the escalation, and not everybody who views porn will end up going to some place that's illegal or abusive, but some do. And if we recognize we as faith communities could have a role in preventing that by having the open conversations, by being a place of grace, then we won't have the outcome where it does get particularly difficult and messy because it's gone so far. But it starts in these basic things like open conversations.
And you're absolutely right. If you compare it to the journey of drugs, somebody who's abusing drugs doesn't suddenly wake up one morning and go, hey, I'm going to inject heroin today. It starts off very low level. It will start off with alcohol. It will start off with cigarettes. It will then move on to cannabis and maybe, a little bit of cocaine before it actually gets to the point of, what we would consider a hard drug. We don't really use that
Yeah.
terminology anymore, but that it doesn't start off with somebody putting a needle into their arm. There is a very categorical process to that point. And you're absolutely right. In the majority of cases involving illegal pornography, it's that kind of journey. Obviously, there are people who are very forensically mentally ill who don't believe that child sexual abuse material is wrong. And that's a very different element of people to work with. They need very, very specialist help, very specialist forensic help, and the risks are much higher because they genuinely don't believe that they're doing something wrong. But the people that I've supported in churches who have actually gone through the criminal justice system for possession of indecent images of children, the one thing that they all say is, how did I get to this point? How did I
Yeah.
get here?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually being able to map it out is really important, for them to see that they didn't just wake up one morning and do it.
Yeah. Another question, and I just recently saw something. I have a friend who's a lawyer and goes stands with victims who've been abused, and so they do a lot to help churches that this is a problem, or to have protocols to help. So I'm interested to hear this with you. What are specific safeguarding protocols that should be in place when a known sex offender or someone with a history of viewing illegal content wants to be a part of a faith community?
I think that the biggest thing is use your common sense. Don't just assume that because they say they're okay and they're not doing anything wrong, that that's the case. It's very important that it's assessed individually on a case-to-case basis. I think having protocols and having safeguarding contracts and all of the other things you can put in place are really good, but don't just blueprint one to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. It has to be a very individualized plan based on the perceived risks and the needs of that particular person. There isn't a one-size-fits-all approach in this case. And again, back to what I said before, is it's important to not just keep this within the church, but to actually utilize specialist agencies that can help, legal advice and that kind of thing. And, like you said, that there are faith organizations who are very well versed on this kind of thing. And it is a growing issue in churches, but it cannot be treated as a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah. I'm up here in Arizona, and I go to a Franciscan Renewal Center, and I appreciate just in the men's restrooms above the urinals, they'll just have signs about abuse, or if this is happening, here's a number to call. And I've seen other churches where they do that for victims of physical abuse as well as sexual abuse. But I just love that there's more openness about honesty, and not only, the safeguarding of the individual hurting, but again, protocols for offenders as well.
Yeah, I think reaching out to experts is key, and to understanding, when I was a pastor, we had a couple of sex offenders who wanted to be a part of our recovery groups, wanted to attend church. And in that instance where the legal issues are already being worked out through the courts, they have a parole officer, they have a specific release plan, and all you need to do really is ask their parole officer, like, what are the conditions of their release? What do they, what's required of them if they're on our property? What are the things that are expected of us? And very often, kind of like you said, Hannah, it was on an individual basis that some had very restrictive plans, others were more open. And so we would follow those in terms of our public gatherings. And then when we ran groups for those who were struggling, those were always on a different night of the week which was possible in our church. That was the only group at the church. So there was no other danger of them being with anyone else except the group that was there in the church for that purpose. And I know other churches have had to institute, parts of the building that are maybe locked off from another part if there's multiple ministries happening, so that the recovery groups can happen and someone with a history of offending or with some kind of a parole requirement could still attend. And I think if you just are aware of that, like, there are ways that this can work. There are churches that have navigated it. Yeah. It can maybe relieve you of some of that stigma of, oh my gosh, this person is so scary and dangerous, we can't even have them on our campus. Like, okay, the instances of that are, in my opinion, so rare that the person who does want to come for help, there's ways you can work within it to keep them in a group and also keep the rest of the congregation feeling safe and supported, even while we're offering that ministry for that individual.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, definitely.